Everything you have lived through until today has not been a punishment, but a preparation. And what if the pain you didn't understand was the sacred language your soul chose to awaken you? Maybe you don't see it yet, but inside you there is a power that doesn't need more proof, more titles, more permission. It just needs you to remember it. Because when you forget who you are, your body screams, your mind goes blank, your energy scatters. But when you remember, something in you aligns with the entire universe. We are not here to teach you something new. We are here to remind you of what you never lost. It says that you are health, that you are a word, that you are pure creation, and that every cell in your body is asking you the same thing. Believe in yourself as if you were already a miracle. What you believe creates you. What you believe creates you. What you believe creates you. This isn't a pretty phrase. It's a warning. It's a promise. And it's perhaps the greatest secret no one taught you with urgency, as if it were the most important thing you should have learned before you walked, before you spoke, before you loved. Because while you keep thinking that you believe what you believe because that's just the way life is, what's really happening is that you're living life the way you believe it is. And that changes everything. When Joseph Murphy wrote that the subconscious is the silent factory of your reality, he wasn't philosophizing. He was trying to awaken you, to shout without shouting, to tell you that there is no wall higher than the one you build for yourself with your thoughts, that there is no enemy more cruel than the idea you repeat in your mind without realizing it. Because beliefs are not harmless ideas, they are invisible architects. They are invisible hands molding your body, your destiny, your health, your love story, your bank account, your voice when you speak, your fear when you are silent. I discovered this late on the mind's clock, but just in time on the soul's clock. Because I had to watch everything fall apart to understand that I had been holding it all together with broken thoughts. I believed that life was a struggle, and life made me fight. I believed that love was a sacrifice, and I became a martyr. I believed I wasn't enough, and I confirmed it with every rejection, every silence, every decision I made from a place of hurt. I'll never forget the day I sat in front of the mirror without speaking, just observing, and I realized that I didn't know myself, that the voice I was speaking to myself with inside wasn't mine. It was the voice of a world that taught me to doubt, to fear, to just survive. That's when I understood the most brutal part of this whole journey. Everything that was happening to me wasn't coming from the outside. It was coming from what I had accepted as true. What I believed about myself became me. What I expected from life became my reality. And no, I'm not talking about magical optimism or think happy thoughts and everything will be rosy. Today, I'm talking about the kind of thought that lives hidden like a virus disguised as logic, the one that says, it's better not to dream so big. It's not going to work out for you. It's too late for you. Those kinds of things don't happen in your family. That thought that you no longer notice because it became a habit, that no longer hurts because you've normalized it, but that continues to decide your life every day without you even noticing. Have you ever wondered who taught you to think the way you think? Who put it in your head that you are what you see in the mirror? When was the first time you said, I can't, and you turned it into law? When did you stop imagining something better because you convinced yourself that dreaming was a waste of time? There are wounds that don't bleed, but build prisons. I had many, and the worst part is that I confused them with my personality. I thought that being insecure was a part of me, that being distrustful was being realistic, that expecting little from life was being mature. And so, without realizing it, I built a small life for myself so I wouldn't be disappointed. I protected myself so much from pain that I forgot about my power. One day, while reading Murphy, I came across a phrase that made me slam the book shut, as if I had read something forbidden. You are not what happens to you. You are what you believe about what happens to you. And right there, something broke. Because for the first time, I understood that I wasn't condemned. I was conditioned. And if I was conditioned, I could reprogram myself. That's when the hardest part began. Discovering everything I believed and didn't know I believed. Discovering that I was afraid of success because I associated it with loneliness. That I was afraid to heal because I didn't know who I would be without my wounds. That I wanted freedom but felt guilty every time I touched it. It's as if freedom were a luxury that someone like me wasn't supposed to have. Unlearning hurts more than learning because learning opens new paths, but unlearning forces you to demolish your inner house, to break down the walls where you hung, the pictures of your reasons, your excuses, your traumas, to burn the structure that held you up, even if it was a structure made of pain. But if you don't do it, you live like the walking dead, repeating, surviving, acting in a play you didn't write yourself. And I don't want you to live like that. I don't want you to get to the end of your life and realize that the enemy wasn't the system, or your parent, or your ex-partner, or poverty. The real enemy was the belief you allowed to live inside without ever challenging it. Today, I can tell you with eyes full of truth that there is no thought more dangerous than the one that says, "That's just who I am," because that thought blocks all possibility of change. It's as if your soul is screaming, "I am fire," but you respond, "No, you are ash," and you stay that way. Today, I want you to understand this, not from your mind, but from your gut, from your heart. What you believe creates you. If you believe that love hurts, you will look for someone to confirm it. If you believe that money is scarce, you will sabotage any abundance. If you believe that you are nothing special, your energy will proclaim it before you even speak. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between truth and lies, it just obeys. And you, your beliefs, are the one who dictates the orders. The secret language of your cells. The body doesn't just breathe, it listens. It doesn't just beat, it remembers. Every cell that lives in you is not just a biological particle. It is a silent witness to your most intimate thoughts, your quietest emotions, your untold stories. And even if you think that what you think stays in your mind, the body hears everything and responds. This is the secret language of your cells. It's not verbal, it's not logical, it's emotional, it's symbolic. And it operates under a law that Joseph Murphy understood with clarity. The subconscious mind directs the functions of the body. What you call a symptom, your body calls a message. What you ignore with reason, your biology screams with pain. Your skin speaks when you don't set boundaries. Your throat closes when you swallow truths. Your stomach bloats with everything you've unknowingly swallowed. Your back carries what doesn't belong to you. Your heart aches when you don't forgive. And your bones tremble when your life has no structure. It's not poetry. It's biology that learned to speak to you in the only language you can't. Ignore the body. For years, I thought my body was separate from me. I treated it like a machine. I demanded that it perform, that it heal when I said so, that it resist without complaining. And when it got sick, I blamed it. I got angry at it, as if pain were betrayal and not a warning. But the body doesn't betray. The body protects. Even when it breaks, it's protecting you from something you're not seeing. Life slows you down so you'll listen. It hurts you so you'll return to yourself. It makes you sick, not to punish you, but to force you to attend to what you've avoided looking at. I learned this the day I found myself in an emergency room with a racing heart and blurred vision. They told me it was anxiety, but I felt that something deeper was trying to get out, as if my soul were screaming through my organs, as if my body were telling me, "I can't take what you're silently taking anymore." That's when I understood that it wasn't just about breathing. It was about listening to what my body had been trying to tell me for years, that it no longer wanted to live on high alert, that it couldn't keep swallowing every emotion without digesting it, that it needed rest, it needed truth. It needed me to look at it like a child, not like a servant. Joseph Murphy said it with brutal clarity. The subconscious controls all the vital functions of your body and responds to emotionally charged thought. That is to say, it's not enough to just think. You have to feel, and what you feel with sufficient intensity is imprinted on your cells. Have you ever wondered how many times you said, "It breaks my heart," and then you felt real chest pain? How many times did you repeat, "I can't take it anymore," and your back gave out? How many times did you say, "This makes me explode," and your body broke out in a rash or an allergy? What if it wasn't a coincidence, but communication? I started talking to my body differently. At first I felt ridiculous, but then I started to notice something. Every time I honored it, it responded. When I stopped to thank it for holding me, I breathed better. When I forgave myself for everything I forced it to carry, I slept better. And when I cried without resisting, the pain eased, as if releasing. An emotion was opening a floodgate of healing. What hurt me the most was realizing that I myself had been my own illness, not out of guilt, but out of unconsciousness. For repeating self-destructive thoughts like mantras disguised as reality. For telling myself, "I'm not worth it. This is too much for me. There's no way out." And my body, loyal to the end, obeyed. Because the body is that, a faithful servant. It has no judgment, only execution. If you program it with fear, it activates the alarm. If you program it with guilt, it lowers its defenses. If you program it with love, it flourishes. Did you know that your cells regenerate faster when you feel peace? That your immune system is strengthened when you feel loved? Do you know that even your genes can be activated or deactivated according to your emotional state? It's not magic. It's science with a soul. But no one taught us this. We were taught to medicate the symptom, not to decipher the message, to distrust the body instead of trusting its wisdom, to see it as something separate from our spirit, as if healing were only physical and not also spiritual. I want you to understand this as if your life depended on it, because it does. Your body is waiting for you to listen. It doesn't want revenge. It wants communication. It wants you to be its ally, not its tyrant. And that dialogue begins by changing the thought that inhabits it. Today, every time something hurts, I no longer cover it up. I listen to it. I ask myself what part of me needs to be seen. What emotion am I denying? What truth am I not telling myself? Because behind every symptom is an untold story, and every organ has its own spiritual dictionary. Sometimes healing doesn't begin in the hospital. It begins in a conversation with yourself, in an overdue forgiveness, in a cry you never allowed, yourself, in an embrace you haven't yet given yourself, in a thought you must bury forever, and another that you must urgently plant. Joseph Murphy said that the most powerful prayer is the one made with absolute faith. I would add something. The most powerful prayer is the one that is also listened to, because to pray without listening to the body is to talk to God with your mouth, but cover your ears with your hands. Visualize as if you've already healed. The mind doesn't just imagine, the mind creates, and it creates with such force that the body obeys it, even when the image doesn't yet exist in the physical world. Visualizing isn't fantasizing. It's anticipatorily inhabiting the reality you want so that your body, your energy, your spirit begin to behave as if you were already there, as if the healing had already occurred, as if the miracle already belonged to you. Joseph Murphy explained it many times, and yet we continue to wait for the change to happen outside first before we believe. We continue to wait to feel healthy before we think like healthy people. But that's not how power works. Power doesn't wait. Power projects. The subconscious doesn't act with logic. It acts with living emotion. And if you live as someone who has already received what they are asking for, then you are not asking. You are commanding. But no one told me that at first. I was also one of those who prayed, crying, begging for something to change with my eyes full of fear and my body full of anxiety. I would visualize, but I would do it from a place of lack, of desperation, of I hope so, of if only I could. And every image I created was contaminated by the wound that wouldn't let me trust. Until I got tired. I got tired of asking and not receiving. I got tired of imagining from a place of pain. I got tired of looking at my life as a chronic patient of my own mind. Then I did something that at first seemed almost crazy to me. I started to visualize myself as completely healthy, even when the pain was still there. I started to walk with my back straight, to breathe as if everything were fine, to look in the mirror as if I had already won that battle that I was still fighting in silence. Not because I was lying to myself, but because I understood that that was the only way my subconscious was going to obey. You see, the subconscious doesn't distinguish between what is real and what is intensely imagined. If you close your eyes and imagine with your whole body that you are at peace, your nervous system believes it. If you see in your mind your clean skin, your strong body, your life without pain, and you accompany it with a sincere, deep emotion, even if it's for just 1 second, that second is planted as a seed. And if you repeat it every day with devotion, with fire, with certainty, the seed sprouts. I don't say this as theory, I say it as testimony, because I also broke. I also lived through seasons where the only thing I wanted was for someone to get me out of myself, out of that dark room where my body wasn't responding, where my mind wouldn't be quiet, where my soul seemed to be asleep. But no one came. No one came to rescue me until one day, at the bottom of that well, an inner voice, quiet, firm, unmistakable, told me, "Imagine yourself healthy, even if you're not yet. Feel free, even if you're still locked up, because that will be the only real way out." And I did it. Not once, not with fear, not halfway. I did it as someone who has no other option. I did it as someone who throws themselves into a faith that hurts, that burns, that is uncomfortable. Every night I would lie down and repeat to myself in a firm voice, "You are already healing." And I would imagine myself running, laughing, giving thanks. Sometimes I would cry while doing it because it felt like a lie, but I kept doing it. And one day, it stopped feeling like a lie. My body began to change. My breathing became lighter. The pain began to recede like a shadow without light. And it didn't happen all at once. It happened with fidelity, with intention, with decision. People underestimate the power of a sustained inner image. They think it's a child's game, but the biggest wars in history have been fought over mental images. The most powerful religions have been born from visions. The cruelest hatred and the deepest love have all started with a sustained image held with emotion. How could your visualization not be powerful if you fill it with faith, with fire, with pure intention? What you see inside, the body feels. And what the body feels, the universe reflects. Visualizing is taking the brush of the soul and painting your own medicine on the canvas of the mind. It's not denying what hurts. It's building a more powerful version that transcends it. It's stopping the repetition of the old story and starting to write a new one before the facts change. Because if you wait for them to change before you believe it, you're already too late. I know there are days when the pain is so strong that you don't even want to close your eyes. Days when it seems absurd. Sometimes when visualizing, I felt like I was talking to God, that those images were prayers without words. And in that silent dialogue, I discovered a truth that saved me. I wasn't asking for a miracle. I was the miracle. I just had to remember it every day until the forgetting surrendered. And now, if you're there with your eyes full of weariness, with rusted hope, I want to tell you something that no one told me. You're not crazy for imagining yourself happy in the middle of the chaos. You are awakening. you are using the most forgotten gift of the human being: to create from the inner vision. Visualize as if you've already healed, not because you're running away from the pain, but because you have decided to lead your destiny, because there is no more powerful medicine than a soul that already sees itself standing, even when the body is still on its knees. Prayer is your miraculous prescription. There is a moment in the life of every human being when they no longer know what else to do, when the body doesn't respond, when the mind is exhausted, when everything external seems alien, distant, empty. In that silent, intimate, almost shameful moment, a force emerges that does not come from ego or reason. The need to pray, but not a learned prayer, not a mechanical recitation, not a fearful plea. I'm talking about the prayer that is born like a cry from the soul, like a secret score that only you know how to sing, like a recipe dictated by the Spirit itself on the verge of collapse. Joseph Murphy said it with an uncomfortable certainty. To pray is not to beg. To pray is to assume that you have already received. But how do you assume that you already have it when you have nothing? How do you give thanks for a healing that hasn't arrived yet? For a peace you don't feel yet? For a miracle that seems not to have chosen you? I know, because I was there, because I have cried with clenched teeth while saying thank you, and inside, I felt like I was lying, because I have repeated words of faith while my body trembled with fear, because I have said, I trust, and at the same time, I looked at the sky like someone who wants to fight with God for not understanding his silence. But in that crack, something opened, and it wasn't outside. It was inside of me. Prayer taught me that the miracle isn't in what I ask for, but in what I dare to believe while I ask for it, that the words I throw into the universe are not magic formulas. They are commands that activate dormant memories, fires that were already burning, certainties that I had forgotten. Because when you pray with conviction, you're not trying to convince God. You're awakening your true self, that self that was always healthy, strong, whole, and aligned. The one who doesn't need proof to feel certainty. The one who doesn't beg because he knows that the energy that created the world also lives within. For a long time I thought that to pray was to repeat phrases until something happened. Until I understood that it's not the number of repetitions that opens the heavens, it's the internal state from which you pronounce them. You can pray only once in your entire life, but if you do it with total surrender, without fear, without doubt, without reservations, a single prayer can move the impossible, because you're not appealing to the intellect. You're opening a door between worlds. You're breathing from another plane. I experienced it the night I thought I couldn't go on. My body was exhausted, my mind burned out, my soul wounded. I knelt, down without religious intention, without a manual, without a doctrine. I just said, I don't know what to do anymore, but you do. And I said it without tears, without a show, just with a completely unarmed heart. And for the first time in a long time, I slept in peace. Not because everything was solved, but because something inside me settled down, as if I had returned home, as if someone had finally heard me, and that someone was me. Prayer, when it's true, is quantum medicine. It's an invisible prescription that enters through the soul and goes down to the body like liquid light. It restructures thoughts. It softens memories. It reprograms the subconscious. Murphy understood it this way. Your mind is the channel, but your emotion is the spark. And if you can truly feel that you have already received what you asked for, then the creation is complete. The universe doesn't need anything more. But it's difficult for us because we were taught to pray from a place of lack, from punishment, from the fear of not being heard. We were told that we have to be good to deserve, that we have to show obedience to be worthy. No one told us that we were already worthy, that we were already a part of the divine, that prayer is not an exam, it's a meeting with your inner creator. a personalized recipe that only you can activate. Today, every time I pray, I no longer speak to a distant God. I speak to the intelligence that breathes me, to the energy that moves my cells, to the infinite field that awaits clear instructions. And my instruction is simple, direct, powerful. Thank you, because it is already done. Thank you, because it is already healed. Thank you, because I already am. And do you know what happens when you pray like that? Your mind gets confused and therefore surrenders. Your body aligns and therefore obeys, and reality begins to fold before you like a paper taking shape in the hands of the soul, because prayer reorders your frequency. And where there is inner order, the external kneels. There is a prayer that I always repeat in silence, like a hidden melody. What I'm looking for is already looking for me. What I'm asking for already exists. What I long for is already mine on the plane where everything is possible. And in the meantime, I rest, because that prayer has saved me more times than I can count. Because it not only reminds me of who I am, it reminds me of how to heal, in peace, not in war, in surrender, not in control. Prayer is your miraculous prescription, not because it magically changes your surroundings, but because it radically transforms your center. And when you change from the center, everything else falls into place like pieces attracted by an invisible force. You don't need to know how to pray. You don't need pretty words. You just need to be willing to surrender, to let go of the idea that you have to do everything yourself, and to allow the sacred, that which lives in you, not outside of you, to take charge. Awaken the doctor who lives in your subconscious. There is a living force in you that is never sick. An ancient, silent, invisible sage who doesn't wear a white coat or use pills or a scalpel. He is older than your diagnoses, wiser than any medical book, faster than any artificial cure. He lives inside you. He doesn't announce himself. He doesn't impose himself. He just waits. He waits for you to remember that he exists. He waits for you to awaken him. This inner doctor is not trained in universities. He has no degree. He doesn't assert authority. He is activated the moment you stop thinking that you are broken, the moment you stop surrendering your power to something external, the exact moment you decide to look inward as someone looking for a forgotten key. That moment, even if it's brief, is the door that awakens him. Joseph Murphy called it the subconscious and treated it as a sacred ally, as a creative intelligence capable of regenerating, restoring, and redesigning any body, any life. He said that if you give it the correct order without fear, without contradiction, that invisible mind will do the rest. That there is no stronger illness than a firmly held idea of health. And yet we forget it. We bury it. We live as if that inner doctor didn't exist. We go through life looking outside for what is inside. We prescribe ourselves fear. We intoxicate ourselves with anxiety. We make ourselves small in the face of a world that convinced us that healing is something complex, inaccessible, reserved for a few. I believed it too. I also thought that healing depended on others, on diagnoses, on specialists, on permissions. I also handed over my body to other people's voices, believing that they knew more about me than I did myself. Until one day, my body screamed louder than my obedience. It cornered me. It forced me to listen. It whispered something so simple that it broke me inside. Your illness is not a punishment. It's a message. And you already know what it says. It was at that moment that I decided to stop fighting with the symptoms and started talking to my subconscious like someone calling a lost friend. I did it clumsily at first. I didn't know how to address it, but I tried. I would close my eyes and say, I know you're there. I know you know how to heal me. I trust you. I hand this part over to you. Do what you know how to do. It wasn't magical. It wasn't immediate, but it was real. Because every day, every night, every silence, I felt that something was rearranging itself inside, not just my body, but also my relationship with it. Today, I began to feel respect for my biology, admiration for my organs, compassion for my cells. I talked to them. I blessed them. I listened to them. And they responded. Do you know what that means? That your body is listening to you. That every word you say becomes an instruction. That every repeated thought becomes a prescription. That your immune system is strengthened or weakened. For a long time, I felt divided. My mind wanted healing. My subconscious, programmed by years of fear, resisted. And that's where I understood the real problem. I didn't need more knowledge. I needed faith, but not a blind faith, an informed faith, a committed faith, a faith that is trained. The faith of someone who doesn't need to see to believe because they have already seen it inside. The faith of someone who talks to their body like a wounded child, with firmness, with tenderness, with respect. The faith of someone who doesn't beg life but honors it with every new thought. One night, I understood it as if a light had turned on. I wasn't alone. I never was. Inside me, there was an intelligence that every day was beating, digesting, regenerating, sleeping, and waking up without me telling it how. I just had to stop interfering. I just had to trust. And then I did it. Every morning I would say to myself, "Today, inner doctor, today I let you act. Today I won't hinder you with fear. Today I believe you. Today I walk like someone who is already healthy. Today I eat like someone who is already cured. Today I speak like someone who has already overcome the trauma." And that act, that small ritual, God, it changed everything. I'm not speaking from a place of perfection. There are still days of doubt, days when the body hurts, when the mind screams. But now I know what to do. Now I know who to call. Now I know that I don't have to do everything alone, because the subconscious is like a garden, and you are the gardener. You can plant fear or health. You can nourish it with images of life or with memories of failure. You can repeat diagnoses or you can decree rebirths. Your emotions are medicine or poison. Everything you feel, you either heal or infect. Every emotion that inhabits your body is not an innocent visitor. It's a chemical that transforms, that builds or corrodes, that vitalizes or poisons. What you call emotion, your body calls a message. But if you don't listen to that message, it becomes a symptom. And if you ignore it long enough, it becomes an illness. This isn't a metaphor. It's a reality that I have felt in my own flesh. For years, I swallowed my sadness with a closed mouth. I put on a brave face for my anger. I smiled while I was in pain. I was strong on the outside while my soul begged for rest on the inside. Until one day, my body started to speak louder than me, and it was no longer anxiety. It was no longer insomnia. It was no longer just exhaustion. It was my body saying, "Either you listen to me, or I will stop you." Joseph Murphy. He understood it with a clarity that disarms. He said that every sustained emotion imprints a pattern on the subconscious, and that pattern becomes flesh. That what you don't release in words, you reveal in symptoms. That each organ vibrates with a different emotion, and when that emotion overflows, the organ reflects it, not as punishment, but as a mirror. And then I realized that I had never learned to feel. I learned to think, to decide, to act, to produce, to solve, but not to feel. I was programmed to silence myself, and I did, until my body screamed. It was then that I understood. My emotions were not enemies. They were my guardians, my warnings, my teachers. They didn't come to destroy me. They came to rescue me. The problem wasn't feeling them. The problem was resisting them, pretending they weren't there, covering them with noise, disguising them with productivity, replacing them with distractions. One day I asked myself, what would happen if I treated my emotions as medicine? What would happen if I stopped judging them and started listening to them? And that's what I did. I sat with the pain like someone sits with a wise elder. I asked it what it wanted to tell me, and it didn't do so with words. It did so with images, with memories, with tears. It showed me where I started to stop taking care of myself. It showed me when I disconnected from myself. It showed me that I didn't need more answers. I just needed to feel myself completely without interruptions. It wasn't comfortable. It was raw. It was like opening a wound that had been infected for years. But that first contact was the real medicine. Because for the first time, my body didn't have to get sick to be heard. Sometimes we believe that emotions are something that happens in the head. Yes, but not entirely. Emotions live in the body. They lodge themselves in your back, in your chest, in your stomach. They stay there, waiting for us to look at them. And when you don't see them, they transform, sometimes into blood pressure, other times into inflammation, other times into blockages that no test can detect. And there is the real poison, in the unspoken, in the uncried, in the unexpressed. Guilt, for example, is an emotion that slowly eats away at you. It doesn't just exhaust you mentally, it damages your quietest organs. The liver absorbs it like a sponge. The stomach fills with acid. The nervous system shuts down. But when you transform it, when you forgive, when you understand, when you let go, the body responds. The body always responds, because the body wants to heal. It just needs your permission. Anger, on the other hand, is fire. If you channel it, it empowers you. If you repress it, it burns you. Sadness is water. If you release it, it cleanses. If you hold it in, it drowns you. Fear is earth. If you understand it, it grounds you. If you deny it, it buries you. And love is air. If you breathe it in, it expands you. If you repress it, it suffocates you. Today, I know that my emotions don't come to sabotage me. They come to show me where I'm not going. They come to bring me back to myself. They are alarms of the soul. They are signals from the subconscious saying, hey, there's something here you haven't looked at. And when you honor them, when you allow them, when you move through them, something changes. Not on the outside, on the inside. I have learned to talk to my body when I feel something is out of order. I tell it, relax, I've heard you. You don't need to scream. I'm here. And it's as if that small act of love deactivates the defense mechanism. As if the body says, thank you, finally. I didn't come to teach you to repress yourself. I came to tell you that if you don't feel what's inside you, you will spend your whole life healing from things that are not physical. That if you don't recognize your emotional truth, you will continue to repeat patterns that your subconscious believes you need to survive. But you are no longer just surviving. You are waking up. You are returning to yourself. Healing is remembering who you are. It's not about being cured. It's about remembering yourself. Healing is not a destination. It's a return, an act of deep memory, a going back to the origin you forgot when pain made you think you were a broken person, because no one is born fragmented. We learn to break when the world tells us it's not okay to be who we are, and that is the real trauma. Stopping the recognition of yourself in order to fit in, turning off your light so as not to inconvenience others. Sometimes we believe that healing is repairing what's damaged, fixing what doesn't work, finding what we're missing. But I no longer see it that way. Today, I understand that healing is much more radical. It's undoing everything you thought you had to be to deserve love. It's tearing off the layers you built to survive. It's looking directly into the void and recognizing that underneath the fear, underneath the resentment, underneath the illness, you are still there. You, complete, whole. unaltered. When I first read Joseph Murphy, something lit up. He didn't talk about the subconscious as a machine. He talked about it as a sacred guardian of who you truly are. He said that your body, your health, your circumstances are nothing more than reflections of what you've accepted as truth, and that if you want to heal, you don't need more effort. You need more truth. Not an intellectual truth, but one that feels like an echo in the soul, one that makes you remember that you are not your wounds, or your past, or your thoughts. You are the consciousness that can observe it all and choose anew. I spent years looking for healing as if it were something outside of me. I consulted, I read, I prayed, I meditated, and in that process, I discovered something both devastating and beautiful. The deepest wound I carried was the forgetting of myself. The exact moment I convinced myself that I had to change to be loved. That silent moment where I stopped trusting my intuition, where I kept quiet about what I knew was true so as not to be rejected. That's where my illness began, not in the body, but in the internal betrayal of denying myself. And when I understood it, I cried. Not as an act of sadness, but as a cleansing of memory. I cried because I finally saw myself. Because behind the persona, behind the defenses, behind the masks, there was a child waiting for me to recognize him. Not to fix him, not to improve him, just to see him, to tell him, I didn't heal because I found answers. I healed because I started asking myself new questions. What if I'm not broken? What if my pain isn't a mistake, but a path? What if healing isn't about changing myself, but about returning to myself? The body responds to that truth, not to punishment, not to demand, but to truth. When you stop seeing yourself as a project to be completed and you recognize yourself as a work that is already perfect, the body breathes differently. The cells relax. The mind stops attacking. And the soul can finally speak. Maybe you don't know it, but your soul has been screaming the same thing at you for years. Don't forget yourself. Every time you get sick, every time you repeat the same pattern, every time you sabotage yourself, it's just a desperate way of reminding you of what you already know, that there is no healing without identity, that you cannot cure what you don't dare to see, that no one heals from rejection, only from love. And love doesn't start when others give it to you. It starts when you give it back to yourself, when you look in the mirror and don't see flaws, but history, when you embrace your shadow, not to justify it, but to integrate it, when you understand that every version of you did what it could with what it had. And for that, it deserves respect. It deserves gratitude. It deserves a home. This is the most revolutionary act of your life. To remember yourself, not as an idea, but as an experience. To remember yourself in your silences, in your intuitions, in your body when you breathe without fear. To remember yourself not as someone who needs healing, but as someone who, by remembering their essence, stops needing it. Joseph Murphy said it simply, "What you believe, you create." But today, I tell you this, what you remember liberates you. Because you don't need to become anyone else. You just need to remove the forgetting. You just need to return. Don't fight the disease. Plant health. We have been taught to fight, to see every ailment as an enemy, every symptom as a war. Fight cancer. Confront your anxiety, battle depression, as if the body were against us, as if illness were a punishment and not a message. But what happens when you stop fighting? What happens when, instead of fighting, you start planting? I learned this late. I understood it when I was already exhausted from fighting my body, from hating my symptoms, from using warlike words to describe what was, deep down, a cry for help. And in that silence, when I surrendered from resisting so much, I discovered that I didn't need to fight the disease. I needed to nurture health. Because the disease wasn't the enemy, it was the messenger. Joseph Murphy explained it with a serenity that cut through everything. He said that where you place your attention, that's what expands. that if you focus your mind on the disease, even if it's to eradicate it, you are watering it. You are feeding the image of what you don't want. But if you plant images of well-being, if you visualize health as if it already existed, then your subconscious receives another order, and that order, like a fertile seed, begins to manifest. But it's not easy. I know, because when the body hurts, the soul despairs. When the diagnosis is heavy, the mind closes in. And in that confinement, you ask yourself, how can I think about health if what I feel is death? How can I believe in healing if the mirror reflects a broken body? And there, right there, is where the real medicine begins. Not in denying what you're living, but in creating a place within you more powerful than what you're living. A place where health is already real, even if the symptom still persists. Because the body is slow, but thought is fast. The body takes time to adapt, but the subconscious is already obeying every order that you don't know you're giving it. I lived it. I lived it when I stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And started saying, what can I plant now? I stopped focusing on eliminating the pain and started talking to well-being. I would lie down every night visualizing my body full of light, my organs smiling, my blood flowing with joy. I spoke to myself as if I were already healthy, not from fantasy, but from faith. And something changed. Not immediately, but it changed. My body started to respond differently, not because magic cured me, but because the war had ended. And when there is no longer a war inside you, the body can begin to heal, because it finally feels safe. There is something no one tells us. Internal struggle creates more inflammation. Prolonged resistance blocks vital energy. The constant stress of wanting to defeat the disease reinforces it in the invisible. Because every cell listens. Every thought is a chemical. Every emotion is an order. What are you ordering without realizing it? I was taught to be afraid of illness. They told me it was a lottery, a sentence, bad luck. But no one told me that my body was always listening to me. That even my smallest thoughts created reactions. That every time I said, this is going to kill me, I was planting death. And every time I said, I am full of life, I was planting possibilities. That's why this chapter is not a call to fight. It's an invitation to surrender, but not from defeat, from trust. To let go of the machete you've been using for years to fight yourself and to take a seed, just one, and plant it with love, with faith, with persistence. Imagine that every thought of yours is fertile ground. What are you planting today? Fear or strength? Self-forgiveness or punishment? Light or shadow? Because you cannot harvest health in a field planted with self-hatred. You cannot ask the body to flourish if you yourself are withering it with harsh words, with judging looks, with condemning thoughts. I know this is uncomfortable because sometimes we prefer to think that everything is genetic, external, inevitable. Yes, but you are not condemned. You are influenced. Yes, but within you there is a power greater than any inheritance, a creative capacity that awaits your permission. And that permission is activated with intention, with imagination, with the decision to plant health even if you don't feel it yet. Joseph Murphy said, your body is like a garden. Be careful what you plant, because sooner or later it will sprout. And that principle saved me. It gave me back myself. It gave me back the power I had surrendered to doctors, diagnoses, and fears. Your words have surgical power. There is a truth that almost no one tells you. What you say designs you. What you pronounce with force becomes flesh. Your word is a scalpel or a balm. It cuts or sews. It kills or heals. It's not poetry. It's biology. It's lived spirituality. Joseph Murphy hinted at it with firmness. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between what you imagine and what you affirm. It believes, it obeys, and it transforms. But what have you been affirming without realizing it? Sometimes we believe that talking is harmless, that saying, "I'm dying of nerves" is a joke, that repeating, "I'm useless" is humility, that declaring, "This disease is incurable" is realism. But those phrases, over and over again, become surgical commands that penetrate deeper than the skin. They modify your tissues. They program your cells. They give instructions to your body to obey you, even if what you are asking for is self-destruction. I didn't understand it at first. It seemed exaggerated to me. Until one day, only after weeks of repeating to myself that I was broken, that I wasn't going to heal, that I couldn't trust myself anymore, I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize myself. It wasn't my body that had degraded. It was my identity. The word incapable was no longer a phrase. It was a structure in my spine. The word guilt was already an echo in my organs. My way of speaking had begun to sculpt my illness. And then I understood. The words we repeat with pain become flesh. The ones we repeat with faith also do. And the most powerful thing, the body doesn't argue. It obeys, like a child who does everything to please a severe parent, even if that parent never gives him affection. My body was following orders, orders given by my inner voice, orders given by me. It hurt me to realize that I didn't need external surgery. I needed a surgery of language, a radical re-education of how I talked to myself, because a single word repeated every morning could cut through fear like a laser. And another said without. Thinking could open a wound that would take years to close. Joseph Murphy talked about the power of affirmations as if they were medical treatments. He didn't use a word without intention. I am perfect health. I am renewed strength. My body obeys the divine intelligence within me. They weren't pretty phrases. They were internal operations, activations of the subconscious code, surgical, words with a single purpose, to rebuild you from within. And so I began, clumsily at first. I felt ridiculous talking out loud. Saying I deserve to be well seemed naive to me. But I persisted, because something in me, a primitive intuition, knew that language is condensed energy. It knew that every word was a tool and that if I used it with precision, I could change my system. I did it for days, then weeks, then months, and one day it happened. I didn't notice it immediately, but something aligned. My thoughts began to surrender to my new words. I no longer said to myself, I am weak, but I am learning to be strong. I no longer repeated, I'll never get out of this. But something inside me already knows the way. And those new words began to act, to cut through the fog, to sew my wounds, to heal my perception. Do you know what the most violent act we commit without realizing it is? Saying, I am, followed by a painful lie. Because I am is the sacred key. It is the voice of the Creator within you. It is the original verb. And when you use it to say, I am insufficient, you are profaning your temple. You are tattooing falsehood on your soul. The word is surgical because it enters where nothing else can. It pierces through filters, excuses, defenses. The word repeated with emotion becomes DNA. It becomes experience, destiny. And you have that tool. You always had it, but no one taught you to use it with precision. Today, I don't want to give you a lesson. Today, I want to beg you to observe how you talk to yourself, to detect every sentence that comes out of your mouth as if it were a bullet or a caress, to say fewer things without thinking, to become a surgeon of your verb, to write your health, your purpose, your well-being from your tongue, not from fear. The most powerful phrases I said in my life did not come from books. They came from my own urgency not to give up. I can start over. God still breathes in me. My body remembers how to heal. I said them trembling. I said them crying. But I said them. and each one, like an internal microsurgery, was returning my soul to my body. 10. You are the miracle you were waiting for. For years, I walked with the feeling that someone had to come and save me. I prayed with my eyes closed but my soul open, begging for a sign, an intervention, an invisible hand to pull me out of the hole where my thoughts were sinking me every day. I waited for a miracle. I pleaded for it, but that miracle never came, in the way I had imagined it. It didn't fall from the sky like a light. It didn't burst into my life like lightning. Until one day I looked in the mirror and I understood. The miracle was me. Not out of vanity, not out of arrogance, but because inside me, hidden under layers of fear, pain, and waiting, lived a dormant force that had always had the power to remake my story. Joseph Murphy said it with firmness, "Your subconscious mind is the architect of your destiny." But I didn't fully understand it until I hit rock bottom, until I could no longer blame fate, the government, my body, or God. When everything external fell away, only I was left. And there, in that inner ruin, I discovered that if I didn't become my own miracle, no one else could do it for me. You feel it too, don't you? That endless weight, that voice that says, when you have health, when the right partner comes along, when the money appears. We live postponing happiness as if it were a gift from a whimsical universe that only responds to the chosen ones. But that thought locks us in. It paralyzes us. It makes us forget that the miracle isn't something that happens outside. It's something that awakens inside. I lived believing that healing was the symptom disappearing, that changing was life becoming different. But the true transformation began the day I said to myself, through tears and trembling, what if I were already the miracle? How would I act? And that question, so innocent, was like a key, because by imagining it, something moved. I started to talk differently, to walk differently, to think differently, not because everything had changed, but because I had started to believe it. And that changed everything. You don't need external proof to know that you are a miracle. You are breathing. Your heart doesn't forget to beat, even when you forget to be grateful. Your cells continue to repair you even when you sabotage yourself. There is something in you that doesn't give up, that continues, that loves even when it's broken, that searches even when it's told there is nothing there. That is already miraculous. But we live disconnected, hypnotized by a narrative of scarcity, of illness, of guilt, waiting for someone to come and touch our forehead with a magic wand and say, "Now you deserve to live in peace." And in the meantime, life slips away from us. Hope rots, waiting for something out there to validate us. What if I told you that you don't need to wait anymore? What if the real miracle happens the day you decide to stop looking outside for what has always inhabited you? I discovered it on the edge, when there were no more therapies, no more pills, no more external motivations. There was only one last option left to become my own miracle, not from ego, but from the soul, not from demand, but from compassion. I started talking to myself as if I were already healthy, to walk as if I already had what I longed for, to be grateful before receiving, to imagine myself being, not wanting. And although the world didn't notice it immediately, my inner world did. The internal doors opened, the mental chains loosened, and something ancient, something sacred, awakened. No, I'm not saying it's easy. It wasn't for me. There were days when repeating "I am a miracle" seemed like a cruel joke. But every time I said it, something in me rearranged itself. Language creates reality. Sustained thought creates form. Joseph Murphy explained it. What you believe with emotion, you create with power. And I chose to